I wasn't expecting her. I'd come over to help my neighbor move a few things, the kind of casual favor you don't dress up for. But when the door opened, it wasn't him standing there, it was her. His cousin, apparently. She leaned against the frame like she had all the time in the world, one brow lifted, eyes scanning me in a way that wasn't rude, but wasn't exactly polite either. "You always look this sharp?" she asked, voice low, almost playful. I could have shrugged, laughed it off, pretended I didn't notice the way her gaze lingered. Instead, I said, "Only when I think I might see you." It wasn't rehearsed. It just slipped out, the way a truth you didn't know you were holding sometimes does. Her smile didn't widen, but it deepened somehow, like she'd heard more in my voice than I meant to give away. The living room was cramped with boxes and the faint smell of fresh paint. Afternoon light cut across the floor, catching in the strands of her dark hair as she bent to push a box aside. She was older, not in the way people mean when they say it kindly, but in the way that makes you aware of time. Mid-40s, maybe? Lines that came from laughing and not caring if someone saw. She asked me to lift a coffee table. I could have managed it alone, but she took the other end, and for a moment our hands brushed along the edge. Neither of us pulled back right away. "You from around here?" I asked, trying to keep it light. "Not really. I come by when family needs something. Or when I need to disappear for a bit." Her eyes flicked toward the window as she said it, and I didn't push. The work went quickly, or maybe it just felt that way because I kept catching myself watching her. The way she folded newspaper around picture frames. The way she hummed under her breath when she thought no one was listening. The way she'd pause mid-sentence, like there was something she wanted to say but thought better of it. When we finished, she offered me coffee. The kitchen was quiet except for the faint gurgle of the machine. She handed me a mug, her fingers grazing mine again, longer this time, deliberate or not, I couldn't tell. She leaned against the counter, sipping hers. "So, do you always volunteer to move furniture for strangers?" "Only the interesting ones," I said. That got me a real smile. She set her cup down, stepped a little closer, not enough to close the space between us, but enough that I noticed her perfume, faint and warm. Outside, the wind shifted, rattling the thin glass in the window. She glanced toward the sound, and something in her expression softened, like she'd been pulled somewhere far away. "You should probably go before my cousin gets back," she said, her voice quieter now. "Is that you telling me to leave?" I asked. "It's me, trying to be smart." But she didn't move. And neither did I. The silence stretched, not awkward, not empty, just full. Then she stepped aside, letting the light fall between us again. I picked up my jacket, half expecting her to say nothing more. Instead, as I reached the door, her voice followed me. "Same time tomorrow?" The next day, I told myself it was just furniture. Just helping out. But that wasn't the truth. I knocked lightly, almost hoping she wouldn't answer, almost. The door swung open, and there she was, hair pulled back loosely, sleeves rolled up. No makeup this time, but somehow, that made it worse for me. More dangerous. Her cousin was gone again, apparently running errands. She led me into the living room without much small talk. The boxes were mostly unpacked now, but she pointed toward a stack of framed photos leaning against the wall. "Can you hang these? I can't get the nails straight." I took the first frame from her, noticing a faint ink smudge on her thumb. She'd been writing something. As I hammered the first nail, she lingered nearby, arms folded loosely. "You don't have to keep coming over, you know," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I know," I said, leveling the frame. I stopped before finishing. She stepped closer, handing me the next frame. "You just what?" I shrugged. I like helping. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something behind her eyes that wasn't there yesterday. Something quieter. Tired, maybe? We worked in easy silence for a while. Or maybe it wasn't easy. The quiet made me notice things. The way she bit her lip when deciding where to place a picture. How she exhales slowly after every small task, like she was fighting off a thought. Were these taken here? I asked, pointing to one of the photos. She shook her head. Different place. Different life. Her voice was light, but her grip on the frame was too tight. I didn't ask what she meant. It felt like one of those sentences where the real answer is heavier than it sounds. When we were done, I turned to leave, but she stopped me. Could you, maybe help with something else? I followed her into the kitchen, where a half-assembled shelf leaned against the wall. I knelt to tighten a screw, feeling her presence just behind me. She didn't move away, even when my shoulder brushed her hip as I shifted. This is the part, she said quietly, where I'm supposed to say thank you, let you go home. Yeah? I murmured, not turning around. Yeah. I straightened slowly, my hands dusty from the wood. We stood close now, the edge of the counter against my back. She reached past me for a glass on the counter, her arm brushing mine, and didn't rush. I wanted to say something I'd regret, but I didn't. Instead, she set the glass down and said, "Stay a little longer." The rain had started sometime after I got there. I only noticed when she cracked open the kitchen window and the sound of it filled the room. It made everything feel smaller, closer. We were sitting at her table, 2 mugs between us, the half-built shelf abandoned in the corner. She was telling me about a trip she once took to Italy. The way she described it wasn't polished, just scattered details. A broken suitcase wheel, a small bakery in Florence, the smell of citrus trees at night. You remember all that? I asked. She smiled faintly. It's what I kept. The rest didn't matter. Something in her tone made me want to ask what she was leaving out, but before I could, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen, the light in her expression dimming. Do you need to get that? I asked. She let it buzz again before turning it face down. Not right now. We fell into silence. Not the comfortable kind, this one felt charged, like words were pressing at the edges, either of us letting them out. When she reached for her mug, her fingers brushed mine. I should have pulled back. I didn't. She noticed. I could tell by the way her hand stilled, just for a second, before curling around the handle. I shifted in my seat. We probably shouldn't. Her gaze caught mine. I know. The rain hit harder against the glass, drowning out the rest of whatever I might have said. A knock at the door broke the moment. Quick, impatient. She glanced toward it, hesitating, then stood. I heard her low voice in the hallway, too soft to make out, but her tone was clipped, final. When she came back, she didn't explain. She just sat down again, closer than before, her knee brushing mine under the table. I tried to make my voice steady. You don't have to, I'm not asking, she said softly. Her hand rested on the table, palm down. I could have ignored it, could have stood up, made some excuse about the time. Instead, I let my fingers drift toward hers until they touched, not holding, just there. I could feel the faint tremor in her hand, and it matched the one in mine. She tilted her head slightly, studying me, like she was deciding something. And then she said it, almost a whisper. Tell me if I'm wrong. The rain, the quiet, the way her eyes didn't move from mine, it was all enough to make my heart hammer. But I didn't answer. The rain didn't stop. It just softened into a steady hiss outside, like the world was holding its breath. She was still sitting across from me, her hand near mine on the table, that unspoken dare between us. I kept thinking I should stand, move, break the moment before it broke me. But I didn't. You didn't answer me, she said finally. About what? About whether I'm wrong. Her voice was calm, but there was nothing casual in the way she was looking at me, like she'd already decided I wasn't going to lie. I took a slow breath. You're not wrong. She leaned back slightly, her gaze dropping for a second, as if she just heard something she both wanted and dreaded. You're younger, she said. You're older, I replied. A small laugh escaped her, but it faded almost instantly. It's not a joke. I know, I said, and my voice came out quieter than I expected. That's why I haven't. I stopped. She tilted her head. Haven't what? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched the way her fingers curled against the wood grain, as if holding herself in place. Haven't done something I can't take back, I said. Her eyes met mine again, and for a long moment neither of us moved. That sounds like you've thought about it, she said. I have. The words were out before I could stop them. No hesitation. No room to take them back. We sat in that stillness until the sound of a car door slamming outside cut through it. She glanced toward the window, her shoulders tightening. My cousin's back, she murmured, though her voice didn't carry relief. I stood automatically, as if I should leave, but she stayed seated. You don't have to go yet, she said. Is that smart? I asked. Her lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Probably not. Footsteps crunched in the wet gravel outside, fading toward the other end of the house. She exhaled, and the tension in the room shifted, not gone, just redirected. She reached for her coffee, then set it down untouched. You make this harder, she said, almost to herself. I frowned. How? By looking at me like that. I didn't know what she meant exactly, but I didn't look away. I couldn't. For a long second, we just stared at each other, the rain the only sound between us. Then she asked, voice barely above a whisper, What happens if we stop pretending? Her question, what happens if we stop pretending, was still hanging between us when the knock came. Not a polite tap this time, but a heavy, deliberate thud that made her flinch. She froze, listening. Whoever it was didn't knock again. Instead, a man's voice called her name. I looked at her, but she didn't move toward the door. You gonna know, she cut in, shaking her head. The voice outside tried again, softer now. Can we talk? Her hand tightened around her coffee mug, knuckles widening. It's my ex. I swallowed. You didn't mention, because I didn't want to, she said quickly, her voice sharper than before. Then, quieter. Because it's not really over. The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. We stayed silent until the sound of footsteps faded down the walkway. Only then did she let out a breath and sink back into her chair. You're still together? I asked carefully. No. But he thinks we are. Or wants to. She rubbed her temples. It's complicated. I almost laughed, but it came out as a humorless exhale. Yeah, I'm starting to get that. She stood abruptly and crossed to the counter, fiddling with the kettle even though there was nothing in it. We were supposed to get married, she said, her back to me. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. He left. Twice. Both times without warning. But when he's here, he's here. And that makes it harder too. She trailed off, pressing her fingers into the counter like she needed it to hold her up. Harder to let someone else in? I said. She turned then, her eyes sharp. Harder to trust that someone else actually wants to be here. The words landed heavy, and for a second, I forgot how close I was to saying something I shouldn't. Something like I'm not him. Instead, I stood moving toward her slowly. You think that's why I'm here? Her mouth twitched, like she almost smiled but caught herself. I think you don't know why you're here. She wasn't wrong. At least, not completely. Before I could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, his name flashing there, and without hesitation, silenced it. Then she looked at me, steady, like she was making a decision in real time. I don't want him here tonight, she said. I want. She stopped, catching herself. The room felt smaller again. The rain had stopped, but my pulse hadn't. What do you want? I asked. She held my gaze for a long moment, then said the one thing that made my chest tighten. You to tell me you'll stay. You to tell me you'll stay. The words hung in the air like they had weight, pulling everything else down around them. I should have answered right away, but I didn't. My mind flicked through every reason I shouldn't. Her ex, the way this started, the part of me that didn't want to be just another name in whatever complicated story she was living. But I stayed quiet too long, and she looked away first. Forget it, she said, moving past me toward the sink. I stepped forward before I could think better of it. I didn't say no. Her hand stilled on the counter, but she didn't turn around. I don't want to be a distraction, I said. I don't want to be here because someone else isn't. She finally turned then, her eyes tired but locked on mine. You think that's what this is? I don't know what this is, I admitted. But I know I keep coming back. And I know you keep letting me. She studied me for a long moment, the kind that makes you want to fidget but also keeps you rooted in place. When he left, she said slowly, I thought I'd be relieved. But it's like the walls stayed up even after the door was open. And you. She stopped, looking down for a second before meeting my eyes again. You make me forget they're there. Something in my chest tightened, and I didn't have a smart response for once. So I stepped closer until I was just a breath away from her. Then let me stay, I said quietly. Her lips parted like she might say something, but instead she just nodded, barely. I reached for her hand, not grabbing it, just letting my fingers touch hers until she closed the space herself. We stood there in the soft quiet, her hand warm in mine, both of us holding on like either of us knew who might let go first. Outside, a car passed, its headlights cutting briefly across the kitchen wall. She glanced toward the window, then back at me. This doesn't fix anything, she said. I know. And it's not simple. I know that too. She exhaled, a shaky breath that sounded like surrender. But I want it anyway. That was enough. I didn't pull her into me, I just stepped forward until there was no space left. Her forehead rested against mine for a long moment before she whispered, Don't make me regret this. I won't, I said, though we both knew promises like that were fragile. We stayed like that, not kissing, not moving, just holding the choice between us, and knowing we'd both already made it. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the streets outside slick and shining. Her kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and something sweeter, maybe the vanilla from the candles she'd left burning overnight. I was still there. Not because I'd fallen asleep on the couch or because it was too late to walk home, but because I had stayed. She moved around the kitchen slowly, as if testing the idea of me still being here. I watched her tie her hair back, the loose strands framing her face in a way that felt almost domestic. Ordinary. Except it wasn't ordinary for us. Not yet. Her phone was on the counter, screen dark. I knew his name was still in there. I also knew she hadn't answered him last night. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. She paused at the kettle. Not yet. We both knew, yet meant she was still guarding herself. But her voice didn't have the same edge it used to. When we sat at the table, the light coming through the blinds caught the framed photos we'd hung days ago. They weren't just hers anymore, not to me. They were part of the spaces we'd built together in small, unspoken ways. I told her. You were wrong about something. Her eyebrow lifted. Oh? You said I don't know why I'm here. I leaned back in the chair, holding her gaze. I do. And why's that? Because even if I'd met you under different circumstances, I'd still be sitting here right now. She didn't rush to respond. Instead, she studied me, like she was trying to decide if I meant it or just wanted her to believe I did. Eventually, she reached across the table, her hand resting over mine. This isn't going to be easy, she said. I'm not looking for easy. That earned me the smallest smile, not the playful one from our first meeting, but something quieter. Something that felt real. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. The same doorway where she'd first looked me over and thrown that teasing question my way. You always look this sharp? I grinned. Only when I think I might see you. This time, she didn't just smile. She stepped forward and kissed me, not a hesitant brush, not a rush of heat, but something steady, like a promise neither of us had dared to say out loud. Walking away, I didn't feel like I'd won something or stolen it. I just felt like I'd stepped into something that might matter, no matter how messy it got. Because for the first time since I'd met her, the distance between us wasn't made of fear. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?